eternal separation from him. He uses the analogy of the cup to demonstrate his judgment. Jesus was about to take our sins on him. He was going to take on what we deserved. Historically, we often think of the times of the first century when the Romans would use the crucifixion as a punishment for death. But the Romans weren't the only people around. There were also the Greeks. The Greeks had a different method of execution. Anybody heard of Socrates? Anybody know how Socrates died? Socrates was tried and convicted and put to death by having to drink from a cup, a poison concoction of hemlock. In the Greek society in that day, the method of execution was drinking poison. And that is how Socrates died. Now, if I was to do something, be convicted in a court of law and be put to death in the United States right now, it would probably be by lethal injection. I cannot imagine having to walk into that chamber and be strapped down to a table and have an injection put in me. I can't imagine that happening. I can't imagine doing anything to get myself there, but I couldn't imagine if I was there, what would that be like? Strapped down, restrained, chained. You're going to have to do a whole lot more than chain me down to make me do that. But what Socrates and people in the first century Greek had to do was willingly walk over and pick up that cup and drink from that cup, knowing that what they drank would kill them. Unrestrained. Voluntarily picking that cup up. The cup of the wrath of God, the cup of death. That was the cup in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus says, "Take this cup in remembrance of me." The cup of Jesus at the Last Supper is the cup of atonement and everlasting life. The cup of the garden is the cup of the judgment and the wrath of God. I find it very interesting that the account of these two cups are within 20 verses of each other in the Bible. There's a message in them being so close. So the question is, the third point, from which cup do you drink? From which cup do you drink? From which cup are you teaching your children to drink? Your neighbors, your coworkers, and so forth. I can tell you in my life, for a while, I didn't know it, but I was drinking from the wrong cup. Then, I knew that I was supposed to drink from the cup of the Last Supper. And I was living that life as a Christian. Going to church, going to Bible study, teaching Bible study. But in about 1995, I made a choice. To put down the cup from the Last Supper, the cup of Hallel, and I went over and I started picking up another cup and I started drinking from it. And I drank from that cup for about 11 years. I made some bad choices. I was teaching my children to drink from the wrong cup. And only by the grace of God did he bring that to my attention to tell me to put that cup down and pick up the cup of the Last Supper, the cup of Hallel. And I'm grateful for that. I don't know why God called me to the ministry. All I know is that he did. Here are some things about my call to ministry that absolutely I don't understand. I sat in congregations just like this for years. Well, actually for about 10 years I didn't sit in any congregation. But when I would sit in the congregation listening to what was being preached, and I was not taking the time to put an application in my life. At the times when God would speak to me, I would wholeheartedly reject it. That's for somebody else. Going forward and praying, that ain't me. There's no way you're going to get me to go down to that altar, because when I go down to the altar, guess what? Everybody's going to watch me going down there and going to say, ooh, what evil thing have you done in your life? Has anybody ever felt that way? Don't raise your hands. People are going to judge you. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. I didn't want to be a Jesus freak. The world scoffs at him. And so I would sit in congregations, I would sit in church services, and I would be there in person but not in spirit. Why would God choose to call somebody who sits in church like that and then leaves the church for 10 years into the ministry? I don't get it. When the preacher would say, oh, come forward if you want to give your life to Jesus. Come forward if you want